Well, hello and welcome to this Monday edition of Gospel Points. Today, with us, joining us via the phone, is Pastor Joel Tetreau. He is the pastor of, the Southeast Valley Baptist Church in Gilbert, Arizona. He's also the author of this new book, The Pyramid and the Box, the decision-making process in a local New Testament church. Pastor Tetreau, welcome to our podcast.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's great to be with you and your audience today.
Well, let's just jump right into it. This is a book that's about decision-making here in the local church. Now, you're a pastor, but not only are you just leading a local congregation, I think you're in a position where you are influencing other pastors and future pastors. When it comes to the area of pastoral ministry and church work, there is so many things that we could talk about. What is it that drew you to say, I want to write a book about this topic of decision-making. I want to research this out more and just kind of get into this a little more in-depth and pass this along to the countless others who will be reading this book?
Kevin, that's a great question. To be very clear, I don't know that I would have had the foresight or, the ability to come up with this topic unless the Lord had not done some specific things. When I was about 26, 27 years of age, I found myself, I'd already had one ministry behind me. I had served as an associate pastor in a Baptist church in Michigan. It was a great church, great experience, and that was during my seminary years. And frankly, having grown up in kind of conservative Baptist and Bible church circles, and having gone through seminary and actually having served an associate pastor at the age of 26 or 27, I found myself in central Minnesota. I was pastoring Mildred Bible Chapel. Mildred Chapel had been established back in 1911. Actually, it was established as a Sunday school back in 1903. And then I think in 1911 it was reorganized as a church. And very frankly, I was like the third pastor in 70 years. The guy before me, Jack Smith, he's the brother of Bob Smith out of Nank. Jack had pastored that church for 35 years, and they had a pastor before Jack that had been there for 35 years. So here I am, I'm 26, 27, and pastor of Mildred Bible Chapel, the third pastor in 70 years, and I felt the weight of that. And frankly, coming into the senior pastorate or the lead pastorate role in those days, I was really struggling, and the reason why I was struggling was for many years, having grown up in ministry circles, my dad had served as president of International Baptist College in Arizona. He had been in Christian education for years. So I was brought up, in and around ministry. And so frankly, now that I was a senior pastor, I'd served as an associate pastor, I was quite personally befuddled. I remember Ed Glennie. Ed Glennie was in charge of the postgrad department of Central Seminary. I was brand new in the doctoral program, and Ed said, "Joel, do you know what you want to do your terminal thesis project on?" I said, "Yeah. I want to talk about decision making." And the reason why at 26 or 27 I wanted to do some research on that was because, frankly, I was personally confused. I was very uncomfortable. As I looked around the kind of churches that I had grown up in and the kind of ministries I'd been exposed to, and man, I saw a lot of, just devastating things in the area of ministry decision making. And in the book, in the introduction, in the first chapter, I talk about the three extremes that I had been faced with early on. And, the first extreme I kind of call, the first extreme is what's often referred to as, the pastoral dictatorship. In some churches, it may not be the pastor, it might be the chairman of the deacon board, or the head of the executive committee. But in the first extreme, you got one guy, and he pretty much calls all the shots, or he pretty much calls, most of the majority of the shots, or certainly, the most important of the decisions, have to be signed off. It goes on his desk. And so, kind of a classic, one-man dictatorship. Over the years, I've called that the monarchy. The second extreme I saw was a lot of churches that endure that when that guy was done, or when, they shot him, or whenever the Lord moved that guy on, a lot of times churches will look at themselves, and the leaders left over kind of holding the bag say, well, we're never going to let that happen again. And so in some cases you'll go from one extreme, like where a pastor has all authority, to a different extreme where the pastor has no authority. And you end up with, in some cases, a board run or a deacon run, ministry where the senior shepherd has no authority outside of just preaching and teaching. So I call that second extreme, I call that the oligarchy. So we got the monarchy, the oligarchy. And then the third extreme, we don't have a lot of it out here in the Southwest, but in the Midwest, man, it was common as corn, and that was conservative Baptist or Baptistic churches where, frankly, no decision would be made until the monthly congregational meeting, and they would argue over anything and everything. And in those churches, it's kind of a pure democracy, right? And the pastors and deacons have, no authority. So I call those three extremes the monarchy, oligarchy, and that last one I call anarchy. And so when I was in my doctoral program, I'm, 26, 27, brand new pastor of Mildred Chapel, and I'm wrapping my head around this, and I was just very befuddled because I knew what I believed was wrong in decision making. I knew that I was very uncomfortable, and I knew that I really felt the scriptures were pretty clear about the problems of those three extremes in dealing with the question of decision making in the church. So I knew what I didn't believe. I was not. So then it begged the question: well, what is the right approach, right? I mean, what is the right approach to decision making? So to answer, I'm answering your question here a little bit lengthier than what I wanted to. But so back in my first senior pastorate, this was back in 1996, 1997. As I'm wrestling through this question, I'm in my doctoral program, considering what my final thesis project would be. It just seemed like a real, just a good fit for me to actually do some research. What is the Bible? Okay, so the Bible doesn't say numbers of things in polity and decision making, but does it say anything? And so it was really, I never really intended for this to be a book. Frankly, as I just started out, those many years ago, it was just kind of on a personal quest to find out, what does Joel believe about a healthy approach to decision making in the local church?
I think that's something that every pastor struggles with to a degree, and even a lot of churches will sit down and try to figure out, how do we do this? And I've seen that situation right. You kind of mentioned where, you've got a guy that's been there since, forever. He leaves, and all of a sudden the church has to figure out, well, what exactly do we do? This guy's just done it. He's done it this way, and that's the way we've done it. But now we're on our own, so we don't know what we do. And how do I look for the next guy who's going to come in? But anyway, well, we've just got a few minutes left on this particular program, and we're going to continue this on through some multiple programs here. But probably the most basic question about the book is the title, The Pyramid in the Box. Explain that illustration.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just, if you would, a quick anecdote, if you will, on just what you just said. Yeah, I mean, going back to that scenario where you've had a faithful pastor, right, for 25, 30, 35 years. In one sense, the decision-making apparatus or approach to decisions, and a lot of times when you have a faithful guy like that, who's been faithfully leading his congregation, man, he's earned trust. And so, in one sense, the decision-making kind of revolves around, over time it grows. And a lot of times when a guy leaves, the church is left looking at each other, and they don't even know themselves what their own approach is to decision-making. So one of the hopes for this book is not that people would adopt Joel's view of, what is the right specific approach to decision making. Frankly, I don't care if you agree or disagree with how, we do it at Southeast Valley. One of my biggest motivations is for for leaders in ministries to ask themselves, well, what does the Bible say about this? And then come up with, what you believe is the right approach. And so that's what I'm saying. Let me answer that last question, and I appreciate that. Yeah, the pyramid in the box. So when I speak of, I'm using the pyramid in the box, and I don't like allegory, but as a little bit of an allegory. And when I talk about a pyramid, I'm talking about those in ministry structures, church structures, leaders in those kinds of structures that they frankly look at themselves as standing on top of their own pyramid. I mean, they got their ministry, they got their church, and just like an Egyptian pharaoh standing on top of his pyramid, then this leader is standing on top of his pyramid. And so that's the idea of pyramid. The idea of box is those ministries who, frankly, the priority of their ministry is the physical, tangible resources of the ministry. That is to say, if we were to ask the question, what drives them in the area of decision making? Well, frankly, in ministries that have the box mentality, what is most important is that we protect the bank account, we protect the buildings, we protect the buses, we protect the quote-unquote ministry machinery. And if that means we have to chew through families, if that means if we use and abuse families, well, so be it. I mean, the ministry must go on. So the pyramid of the box, both of them reflective of, I think, which at the foundation, I think, causes a domino effect, which leads to further and further unhealthy decision making.
Well, Pastor Joel, I want to say thanks for joining us here in our, at least this edition. We're wrapping up to an end. I do want to now all of a sudden get into a conversation about dispensationalists and the use of allegory, but I'm gonna hold off on that.
I'm sorry, I threw you that softball. Sorry.
But thanks for joining us here today, and I want to thank you all for listening. Join us back on Wednesday. We're going to continue this conversation. Again, the book is entitled The Pyramid and the Box, and you can purchase your own copy. We'll have the link to it on our website, but you can go to whiffandstock.com. Even on Amazon, you can purchase this book, and we'd encourage you to do that. So we'll join you here next week, or it's not next week, excuse me, this upcoming Wednesday, and we'll continue our conversation about the pyramid and the box.